The CDC today said it's reviewing procedures for controlling the spread of Ebola after a nurse contracted the virus while treating the first Ebola patient in America. As concerns spread, political blame is also spreading. A series of new ads are blaming Republicans for the outbreak.
The CDC says its discretionary funding has been cut by $585 million since 2010.
Cut. Less government. Cut.
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 Our budget has been flat since 2003. Responding to an emerging infectious disease threat, this is particularly damaging.
And on the other side, some Republicans aren't happy with how the government is handling the crisis. We begin with Dana Perino. Dana, great to have you today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Okay, so the ad. To me, it obviously is one of desperation. The Democrats waste no time, right, to figure out a way to help themselves politically. Bob's over here loves the ad, and I think, isn't that typical? To love an ad like this right before the midterms, which actually just, one, it's provably false, and two, it tries to take the heat off of congressional Democrats like Harry Reid. If they were so concerned about Republican budget cuts, which, again, that is provably false. But if they were so concerned, why didn't they six months ago say something? The Ebola threat is not new. And the president was on the defensive in August when Dr. Frieden of the CDC finally went to Liberia. He came back with firsthand experience and said, we have got to do something. Healthcare workers across the world at the UN and the World Health Organization and Doctors Without Borders said the United States has been very slow to act. The United States also, they put the Western world in that category, but to me that they mean the United States because we have to be in the lead. We are the global leader. But this, to me, the Democrats are mistaking something. This Mother Nature is in charge here, and this is Mother Nature's world, and we are living in it, and we have to try to manage it, and we have to try to trust the CDC. Dr. Frieden has, I think, been doing a fairly good job of trying to keep people informed up until today. I don't know whether he is just running ragged or what, but his comments today led to an NBC headline that we have to rethink our Ebola infection control. Just last week, they told us that we were not to worry about anything. And I want to trust the CDC because, as I said, I don't think that we have a choice. We've had a lot of theory, a lot of practices. I got to participate in a global pandemic exercise. I did. It was very fun.
Was
Scooter
it Pilates?
Libby played the president. It was amazing. In 2007. And it was fascinating to see how does it happen? How does it start to spread? And what do you do to try to keep everybody calm and keep them informed? I think the CDC is playing a little bit of catch-up, and I hope that they are able to do something soon to reassure people they've got it under control.
All right, that and with the help of God. All right, Greg, what are your comments? I see you nodding your head a little bit in disagreement.
Well, before, let's be clear here. Mother Nature, a bit sexist.
Okay. You know Father Nature?
Yeah. The funny thing is we are now living in an age of pestilence and roving hordes. I mean, it's amazing that President Obama has brought the Middle Ages to the 21st century. It's incredible. But I have to say that this is ideology as a sport. It's not just the Democrats did this with Hurricane Katrina. Remember that somehow Bush killed all those people. But as the leftists blame Rick Perry and the sequester, the right also blames Obama for spreading Ebola. We had somebody on this very network who said that. His name rhymes with Oblo, right? Keith Oblo. Anyway, so
that was his name.
That's his name.
It is the different sides of the same coin. We are both guilty of this, and we should probably avoid blaming people for tragedy. However,
where do we go from here?
The left is better at it because they've had more practice with Katrina, and also any disaster happens to be our fault because you link it to global warming. Right. So if you are a global warming skeptic, it's your fault for every storm. Terrorism, 9/11, ISIS is also our fault because of our Middle East policies. So there's always the left always has a tendency to blame people for things that are often out of our control, and that's wrong. But blaming budget cuts, it's absurd, and it's disrespectful to the taxpayers who have to hand over billions of dollars to the NIH, who then see a tiny percentage of that money going to building facilities when it goes to God knows what else. It's not about funding. It's about being the responsible use of the funds.
Right.
All right, I'm going to get to Jesse, and then Bob. We'll begin with Bob about the midterms.
I mean, this really is cut right out of the Democrat playbook. Whenever there's a problem in the federal government, the Republicans are racist, and the Democrats need more money, and they need it right away. And I'm not surprised.
And they will spend it wisely.
And they're going to spend it wisely this time. And I'm not surprised the Democrats are politicizing death. I remember your friend Alan Grayson on the floor of the U.S. House a couple years ago said, Republicans want you to die. But let's look at what they actually said. They said that there's been cuts, okay? The NIH, under President Obama, spent $1.5 million on studying obese lesbians. Obese lesbians, and now all of a sudden they don't have enough money for Ebola. I think they got $3 billion to fight these things like Ebola, and instead of using it for that purpose, they spent, I think, 6% on that, and the rest of it was spent on urban gardening and bike paths. Yep. And neutering pets. So I don't believe anything when they say that the CDC budget's been cut. It's actually up 35% over the last 10 years.
All right, Bob, so respond to Jesse. Let's talk about midterms.
I just quickly respond. I find the fact that the Republicans are jumping in here saying the government wasn't prepared for this. The same people who say the government should be much smaller, insignificant, only worry about defense and intelligence. And, you know, whenever Republicans come up and defend and say, why don't you have a better government response to this? They're the same as trying to take government apart. So I don't take much into it. I do agree with this. If I were the Democrats, I probably would not play with this issue. But let's face it, at this stage of the game, they need something in the form of a Hail Mary pass. This, you know, each state's responsible for their own health care, and the only time the CDC is supposed to get at this is if it's a foreign invasion, which this is. But Texas is responsible for Texas, and obviously Rick Perry and his Texas Health Board haven't done a very good job.
Oh, you're blaming Rick Perry for this, really, Bob?
Yeah.
He got that talking point from Joan Walsh.
Do you want to play politics with it? We can play politics with it. Obama basically had this in front of him. In Bush and the Clinton administrations, they both had a bioterror advisor under each presidency. Obama got rid of it. And in 2010, because the ACLU pressured him, he got rid of regulations saying that they could quarantine guys on flights and could report their status to the CDC.
Well, you know,
he got rid of that. Actual Republican regulations.
I'm glad to see that you're now against cutting jobs in the government and the regulations. You think the regulations, doing away with regulations, is bad too?
Well, I think that, Bob, they spent $1 billion out of the CDC fund. They took $1 billion from that to spend on the healthcare.gov website.
Wow.
I mean, $1 billion of it. So I think, and then this is like a government. They always will say more government, and then when you look at the prioritization that they put the highest premium on, they screw up, and then they say it's because of cuts. This happens across the board. And then you can look at little things and say, well, why do they have the street lamp study at the CDC, at the Center for Disease Control? Why would you have a street lamp study?
Why do the Republicans, I'm just curious what your answer is, why do the Republicans think that government ought to be more involved in this when they're so much against government involvement?
Because believe it or not, we actually do care. We actually do care because it is, our money, and we hate it going to things like Solyndra, which helps Obama's cronies, when in fact maybe that could have gone to a vaccine, too. I'm using the same argument that the Democrats use. Like, the money could have gone there instead of there.
Meanwhile,
so the fact is, what I'm talking about, I'm a guy whose money goes to the government, and I would like to see it actually go to something worthwhile.
Right Jesse, I'm going to bring you in now, but I want to play a little bit of sound here. And this is from USA Today. Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page, and it's tying in about the elections, midterm elections, Obama, and Ebola. Take a listen.
Both these stories, the Ebola virus and the threat from ISIS, are feeding into a sense that a lot of Americans have that the world is not only a dangerous place, but that the government is not competent to handle it. I think that's a very dangerous thing for President Obama, the sense that his administration is not competent to protect the American people. That is the most fundamental job of a U.S. president. And I think it's a big factor in the midterm elections.
I mean, this is the same government that's saying, you know, don't worry, Rubes, we got this Ebola thing under control. They couldn't protect the White House from a knife-wielding man running in. They couldn't protect the CIA compound in Benghazi. I mean, they wasted billions of dollars on a website that doesn't work. They let guns walk all over into Mexico. So no one trusts this government, especially it's compounded by the fact that the president, whenever there is a screw-up, uses incompetence as a defense. He says, yeah, we screw up. Yeah, you know what? 8% of the country trusts this federal government.
Yeah.
Those people are probably working in the administration. It's no reason why.
And they use the IRS as a political sword. That's to the less. Dana.
I think if you look today at the Gallup poll that came out that looked at the top 5 issues that people are considering when they're heading into the midterms, in the top 5, for the first time in a long time, Republicans lead in the public opinion as to who would do a better job. The first thing is the economy. The second thing is the way government works. So I don't think that people are going to go to the polls to vote on Ebola in particular, but they might factor the response of Ebola into their thinking as to who would do a better job of governing, and does the president need some sort of a checks and balance system, a divided government, and will that lead them, the few independents that are left, to make a decision to vote for Republicans? I also just want to mention, and I don't have a picture, I'm sorry, but I'll post it on my Facebook page.
Oh.
I heard from this. Do you remember last year I did that fundraiser for the African Dream Academy?
Right.
It's in Liberia. It's run by Reverend Samuel Enders. And so they're in Liberia. They sent me this picture. They've got everybody together. The school's shut down by order of the government. They are trying to do everything that they can through a faith-based organization with donations from the United States to try to keep their people safe in the middle of this epidemic and a crisis where the people are dying every day. And I understand in America it's serious, but I'm going to put up this picture because I want people to realize that these are lives on the line, that they are
right now
is happening as we speak, and they don't have anything that we have. They don't have $1 million treatment. They don't have electricity. They hardly have any ways to feed themselves, and those countries are absolutely disintegrating, in Liberia in particular, and I believe that the United States has a particular obligation to continue to help Liberia.
Greg.
I think, to Jesse's point, the problem here is a perception that if America were a car, the president is behind the steering wheel texting instead of keeping his eye on the road. If you look right now, John Kerry on Thursday said, life as you know it will end if we ignore climate change. He didn't say ISIS or Ebola. He said climate change, even as the studies are showing that they've exaggerated the threat. We have a president today, tweeting today on climate change, also tweeting on minimum wage today. So this really isn't the priorities of an administration. It's a priority set by a teacher's lounge of grad school activists. These are no, but it's true though, Bob. The things that they care about are things that belong in an elitist institution. It's not what America is worried about.
It's that same group thing.
Greg, there is just a difference here. I mean,
yes.
I happen
I agree.
I happen to believe that climate change is the single biggest threat to this country. Now,
okay.
You don't agree with that, but to Jesse's point, or Jesse's points, there were about 100 of them. I didn't get all of them, but
I didn't expect you to.
Well prepared.
Try to be well prepared talking to Jesse Waters.
All right, let's, Bob.
Okay. Just let me say one thing about the elections. To the extent Susan Page stumbled on one thing that's probably accurate, and that is that the people expect the government to protect them. And so every time you have a case like this, it does the attorney of the administration. But let's also keep in mind, we've got 3 cases in the United States. That's it. And we got 318 million people. I mean, we all ought to just get this off our top storyline and get it where it belongs, which is in its perspective.
I just want to say that they were able to pull up that picture from the African Dream Academy. I just want to show you that, let me just put some faces to the story here. I think that they have the picture of African Dream Academy. They just told me they had it. There they are. If you go on their website, they actually try to keep it pretty up to date, and they'll give you some real-time information on the ground.
All right, there you go. Very good discussion. You can all stay. This is fantastic.